Yes, it's Shadow Radio. It's time for that little felis caddis in us all. This is Shadow Radio. We have a great show for you today. We have the third part of the series with Dr. Nuccitelli talking about iPredator, and we have some interesting stories here going on the internet today, especially with the FCC. Has anybody read the FCC rule now? We're going to go ahead and do the news. Everybody likes the news here, so we're going to do apparently a manhunt for shooting suspects grinds in Ferguson. So manhunt for shooting suspects. So apparently 2 cops got shot in Ferguson in response to the Michael Brown shooting. Well, what are we going to do about this, folks? The police officers are supposed to protect. I think that's gotten lost somewhere. I think that the authoritarian has gotten lost a little bit. I think that perhaps they should be a little better at their jobs. Yeah, who am I to say anyway? I'm just an internet broadcaster. I don't really have any experience with that kind of stuff. But I would think that you would treat a human being like I would want to be treated. Unfortunately, that doesn't always happen. So we have that, Oklahoma players rise up against racism. Congratulations. I love to see this kind of stuff. Fog delays recovery in military helicopter crash. UN tally of Ebola death passes 10,000, most in West Africa. So we're going to do some technology news here. And let's find some interesting. Most of these interesting stories come from Google. So Cook was offered jobs. So let's say this. So we have USB Type-C now. What is USB Type-C? Here's everything you need to know about USB Type-C. Another connector. Goodness. We have so many connectors out here. Apple and Google launched devices using the new USB standard this week. New MacBook and the Chromebook Pixel technology video blogger què ğvromli guides us on the new USB-C standard. Matters. Does it matter for us all? Let's see. It's actually USB 3.1. The standard will be available for computers and accessories and smartphones in the next couple of years. The advantages of the standard: it's smaller and thinner. It can carry 100 watts of power, 10 gigabits per second, and reversible backwards compatibility. Well, that's good. So if you want to check that out, you can check that out on Google. Google News has that for you. Some other later news here: the FCC issues of course, the 400-page long net neutrality rules. I suggest that you download the PDF that discusses the net neutrality rules of defining the internet now as a utility. I don't understand why they can't just leave it alone. It's worked fine without any interference for years, and now you have to come in and you have to try to regulate it, and so leave it alone. Goodness, there's nothing wrong with it. Somebody has to figure out some way, whatever. Good or bad, just leave it alone. GM recalls Chevrolet Volt over carbon monoxide. Oh, there's a spinner. What's new now? Twitter takes on revenge porn. Interesting. Revenge porn. So, what's new now? So I guess they're trying to take on the people who perpetrate these kind of deeds. So, we're going to take a look at this real quick. Twitter's latest ban to revenge porn. Yeah, they're trying to ban them, apparently. Twitter updates its rules specifically to ban revenge porn. Okay. Chromebook Pixel review of 2015. Less expensive, and it's still impractical. Chromebook Pixel review. So we're going to do that real quick. Very small Chromebook. The Chromebook Pixel was made, I'm just going to read this for you. The Chromebook was made most beautiful laptop that we would people not to buy. What? With a machined aluminum chassis, pixel-dense screen, and spacious keyboard, it had a design that in some ways outmatched even Retina display MacBook Pro. The problem, it ran Chrome OS for an operating system, with no support for the sort of desktop apps you'd expect to use on a $1,299 machine. Speaking of the sort, it cost $1,299. Wow. Oh, and the battery life was short too, barely 4 hours on the charge. So I guess, if it looks pretty, gotta have that battery life. Honda starts advertising campaign related to airbag recalls. Some Apple investors want company to buy Tesla Motors, so we're moving into that area where we're going to get cars. We have a bit of electric cars. Dell, Asus, Lenovo take pot shots at Apple's new MacBook on Twitter. Everybody's always fighting over who has the better computer. Microsoft's seen as its gaining cooling tablet market. We're just going to run through these things pretty quickly because it's all the same old slop every time. Every time it's somebody fighting somebody, it's somebody suing somebody. I can classify news day by day because every day somebody got shot, somebody's suing somebody, or somebody has went to rehab. Those are the three the three things that are mostly on the news today. And I don't care about those things. So let's talk about things that we do care about. We have some great responses in the community. We have a lot of people who are starting to donate now, and I like to specifically, personally, call out those two people who donated today, who donated on, this would be March 13th. So if you donate on March 13th, you know who you are. I thank you very much. That helps us out so much. You guys don't realize how much that helps us out. Okay? So thank you for your donations. You know who you are. And we're going to go ahead and move to the first segment here with Dr. Nuccitelli for the iPredator series. So this is a hard-hitting one, so pay attention. Here we go.
Hello, everyone. We're back with Dr. Nuccitelli for the final element of the Part 3 series, dealing with cyber criminology and whatnot. How you doing, Doc?
Oh, good. Thank you for having me on. Look forward to getting to have a great discussion today on online psychopaths and iPredator.
I think we have a great show for today because we've recently did quite a bit of research for this final show, and we have some great stories. I wouldn't want to call them great. I would want to call them horrible stories, but they kind of show you some of the intricacies of the human mind and behavior, especially when it comes to criminology, especially online. And we're going to be discussing a few topics, especially with child pornography, things like that, or how it's viewed. And we'll go from there. And we're going to start out here. We're going to do this in segments here. I think it's easier. On the phone and on the internet, we've discussed Stanton Samnow's recently published second edition of Inside the Criminal Mind. Now, myself, Shadow, I rarely purchase books. It's very rare for me to go out and purchase a book. I have means otherwise to get books. And most of you in our information security know about our library here that we use with 16,000, 18,000 books. But in this case, I had to purchase this book, Inside the Criminal Mind, because it's very interesting. Stanton Samnow's book. That's correct, Doctor?
Yes, it is. Stanton Samnow, and his new book is not Inside the Criminal Mind, but because that was the one published in '84, this one is Inside the Criminal Mind, revised and updated. It's after 30 years. So it was published and released November 4th of 2014, so a couple months ago.
Okay, so a couple months ago we have basically the leading edge criminal psychology book by Stanton Samnow. I want to make sure I pronounce his name correct. Stanton Samnow. Okay. So we've seen when that was published. We've heard when that was published. You said his first edition was published in '84, and updated the revision. And I actually have the book open now in PDF, and for everybody, and I'm doing this just for you, Doc, because I know this is a very, very big feather in your cap, and it's very important to me to know that whom I'm talking to was actually quoted in one of the fathers of modern criminology's book that was published. So on page 63, I'm reading out. Like I said, I'm going to do this just for you. Dr. Sam now says the following, and also quotes Dr. Nuccitelli, and he writes, I quote, "Psychologist Michael Nuccitelli, an expert in the area of online predators, points out bullying used to be confined to schools. They used to be confined to schools, neighborhoods, or some small geographic location that bullied child could leave and seek respite. With cyberbullying, the target child has no escape from the taunting and harassment." So I would think that holds true.
Well, I would certainly, I mean, for me, and thank you for, actually reading that. I don't tell many folks about it. Is that when I had learned about it, put it this way, that's on page 63, and Dr. Samanow, for him to actually quote me, I almost wanted to go and get a tattoo on my forehead with the number 63. Didn't do that. But I was just very honored that he actually recognized me. And most important, because changing my career from being a straight line shrink psychologist to what I hope to be able to create with your help is cyber criminology, cyber criminal psychologist. I just couldn't be, more gracious to Dr. Samanow for doing that.
Yes, and I would agree too. I think being published in a book would probably be one of my highlights should that ever happen. Perhaps in the future we can work together on some form or way to get us, both published in some book. It validates basically our research. So that's an interesting thing. And let's see, we're gonna move on to now. I do want to let the community know that we've been hitting it pretty hard about the cyber criminology, iPredator, and things like this. It's in order to get you to read the information and understand the information because, and Dr. Nucci and I have talked about this, we want to bridge that gap between InfoSec and psychology. But as we've discussed, we've decided that we probably want to call that cyber forensics rather than psychology because of all the time needed to vet sources and vet people who are committing these criminal acts online. Would you agree with that?
Well, yeah. Well, of course. What I hope to do today, since it's part 3 of our discussions, and once again, thank you, I can't say that enough, is that from the InfoSec professionals who listen to this, is to understand that going forward, and I don't have research to back this up, but I have done extensive research in developing iPredator and everything that I've done, is that I believe within the next decade, maybe no longer than 2, but I believe within the next 10 years, information security professionals and experts are going to be involved with every typology of iPredator. And if you want me to name the typologies, I can. But I believe going forward, information security, and I said this in the first show, that it is going to be compulsory for everyone because we live in the information age. So InfoSec is going to be a very, very important field of study, of application. And like I said, is to me, the goal is to create, and with your help, is the bridge between InfoSec and criminal and forensic psychology. And what we had discussed is not cyber forensics, because that is presently the field of knowing the hardware, which is InfoSec, I learned.
I see. Okay.
It is essentially where we're going, is cyber criminal psychology and cyber criminal profiling. Those two arenas do not exist as of yet, and that's what I'm hoping we can create.
Okay, so basically, to put it in other words here, just saying it another way, is basically we're going to profile the internet criminal. So as part of our charter as information security professionals, we want to profile the psychological states of the internet criminal. Okay.
Exactly, and this doesn't apply to, well, if you and I are to put our heads together, but eventually down the road, if we can, create this, is that I can foresee doctoral degrees in cybercriminal psychology, PhD, PS, whatever you want to call it, to where the grad student is trained to get a doctoral degree, not just in criminal forensic psych, not just in information security, but in an amalgamation of the two, to where once he or she has got a doctoral degree, that person is able to be exceptionally proficient at dealing with who? Children, adults, businesses, entities of the information age, because that's what we live in. That's not existent right now.
Whom engage in these tactics?
Well, exactly. Like, for instance, Shadow, is that, when I get calls, I don't know, the technology behind how, they hacked this woman or this child, or, how they were able to break down. I mean, that really is, within InfoSec, there is a subfield called digital forensics, computer forensics, online forensics. But that field in and of itself doesn't deal with between the ears. I would have to go to you to answer that for me. And vice versa, in your field presently, you come across a case, I can't give you an example because I'm not an InfoSec expert, to where knowing a little bit about signature, modus operandi, why internal breach as opposed to external breach, the dynamics of the unidentified or suspected assailant, to me, that is very important to an InfoSec expert.
Yes, I definitely would agree, and this is where we have to get some of my users and some of the people in the hacker communities and whatnot to understand this, which is why I've been hitting this so hard with these past couple weeks with this three-part series. Now, I do want to mention to everybody information.
May I ask
Sure.
a question, Shadow, for you as the rep? Is that, and not that I got a lot, I mean, most of the responses I got from InfoSec, and thank you, InfoSec World, have been very favorable, and I've also dealt with others in the past prior to Shadow, but from, dealing with you, is the vast majority have been very positive and beneficial. But there has been a couple of them, and I appreciate opposition. I enjoyed dissension. But, because when I receive dissension, opposing arguments, I don't fight back. I investigate research and come back with an educated response. But I recall one person, and like I said, nothing against the person, they had written to me or written to you, and I was connected to it, that it said, this is not pen testing or InfoSec, this is psychology and should be in a psychology community. Now,
yes, I do remember that. I do remember that post.
And I do understand where that comes from, and so no ill will. But after I read that, and I've heard it before, just like when I even wrote iPredator 4 or 5 years ago, Dr. Nuccitelli, just because cyberspace is, anonymous, it's just a tool, And 4 years ago when I wrote iPredator, I was like, no, doctors, it is, not just a tool, it's a new way of life, it's a new dimension, it's a new environment. But if you could, is for the InfoSec experts or professionals, what is it, do you think, to where they don't feel that understanding the basic underpinnings of an internal breach, external breach, online assailant, whether identified or not identified, why would you say that InfoSec professional would think that?
Well, I can answer that question quite easily. As we've stated before many, many times, that this is a new ground for the coupling between these two professionals, or professionalisms, or studies. So when you do something for so long, especially, you find that this comes across with a lot of the older InfoSec people. People have been doing this for years, and this has just never been part of them. The the forensics for iPredator, or the forensics for how people think online and commit criminal acts. It just hasn't been a part of it for so long. So the disconnect all lies there. So as we tread on this new territory and introduce these new topics, eventually once they start reading the material, I think that they'll come around and kind of say, well, maybe this does have something to do with my profession. So it's a simple matter of, well, I've learned so much, why do I have to learn more? I think that's pretty much what it comes down to.
Am I missing something? I mean, because I study after I read that, and then obviously, dealing with you and, us working together as we go forward to not just help but to educate, to me, from what I've studied, InfoSec is a lot more than just pen testing. I mean, it's huge. I mean, but I didn't need to study that to know that that it's going to be one of the top industries, marching on. Now, it may not happen in 5 years. It may take a decade or two. But I can definitely I can't prove it, but I can definitely see them, is the field of criminal psychology and InfoSec becoming one, and essentially that bridge is created, where it creates an entire new field or industry.
That's true, but let me say this then. Pen testing is a subset of information technology as a whole. And some people in the information community think that when they join the community that's what it's all about. Find out how to, penetration test systems, find the exploits, and that's what they want to do. Okay? So when it comes to that, it is a subset. Like anything else, we have subsets of information security, information technology. Information security is a subset, of course, of information technology. And then we have our subsets in our entire tree of different professional things in there.
Okay. I mean,
I think that leads to it, but go ahead.
I mean, as I said, I do this every day, and, when I get calls from folks from all over I even got a call not too long ago from Australia, is I wish if I could turn or change the space-time continuum, turn the hands of time back, or go forward, is that I wish that I could have been trained, academically, experientially through job and internship. I wish I could have been trained in information security so that now, going forward, I would understand what it all means.
Well, I've had the question posed to me quite a few times, Doctor, of why am I so good at what I do? And that's not tooting my own horn or anything. A lot of people that you meet in the information security community, or in any other community for that matter, think that when you post something or you post something that seems to be intellectual to them, that they are deterred from that, or you're narcissistic, or I've just read a post today where I posted one of my ciphers online, and any time that we find something to encode data or anything, we always want to post it to the community and see if it can be broken. Just another way of seeing how valid our encryption data, our encryption algorithms are. And I've had one gentleman post to that, saying, well, nobody cares about this. This is, you're narcissistic, you're self-important, and all this stuff simply by, making a simple post. And you'll run into a lot of that. There's a lot of people in the community, not specifically mine, but all over, especially on G+. It seems to be more prominent on G+, that we have this type of personality. When you post some things that are very, very intellectual, at least, they think it's intellectual when it's simply an algorithm. But for the most part, you find a lot of that in the community.
I mean, because to me, Shadow, is that, and I'll say them very quickly, is that the 7 typologies of iPredator are cyberbullying, cyberstalking, cybercrime, which InfoSec is definitely involved in, online sexual predation, cyber terrorism, which I see is going to be huge for InfoSec, cyber harassment, and then, which the big one to me, which I recently added, is online child pornography, the consumption, collection, and distribution / business thereof. So of those typologies that fall under iPredator, I see, and please tell me if I'm wrong, Shadow, I see InfoSec, being involved with every single one of those typologies.
that was to be my next comment there. I would challenge anybody in the information security community to look through these typologies and find one that they're not going to be dealing with as a profession, whether you're doing pen testing or not. Let's say, for instance, hypothetically, that you work for a government agency, and the government agency is taught with finding online child pornography sites and penetrating them because they're illegal, penetrating them and finding where they're located and whatnot. You have to know a little bit about that. That's one of the typologies. So it's going to be intertwined with every portion of information security. At least we hope so. At least we're trying to get it that way. And if they haven't already, they haven't realized it. But I would pretty much guarantee, especially within our field, that at least one of these typologies has been involved in any cybersecurity professional or information security professional.
And let's just take the pediatric typology, which would seem not that it's soft, don't get me wrong when I say this, but of the 7 typologies, cyber terrorism to me being the most lethal and deadly on a mass scale. But the pediatric typology of cyberbullying, Shadow, about how psychologically destructive it is to the target child as well as to the assailant, but specifically to the target child, cyberbullying. Well, what we know about cyberbullying is there is the phenomena called cyberbullying by proxy. And anybody can Google that, cyberbullying by proxy, that. But cyberbullying by proxy is where the cyberbully gets his friends, family members, or even family members that are adults that doesn't know who the target is, doesn't know the target is a child, may actually have been swindled to think that the target is an adult. Cyberbullying by proxy is a group of online assailants that target a child, a minor.
Absolutely. And let me respond to that too. And I will say this, and I hate this having to be the truth, but the fact of the matter is, it is very simple. If you are online, if you're online a lot and you deal with a lot of people online, sadly enough, it's very simple to hornswoggle, and I love that word, people into bullying other people without knowing, because you simply can create a story. Well, this guy did this guy, you know what I mean? And you're taking advantage of somebody, and believe me, these people look for these weaknesses who have the ability to simply believe things without vetting them, because, that's become a way of life on the Internet. Usually it's somebody that you trust, and they gain the trust, and this goes back to Psych 101, gain the trust. And once you gain somebody's trust, it's very easy to manipulate them into doing things that they wouldn't normally do. So they're doing it not only by proxy, but without knowing, without knowing what the end result is. So it's a matter of just a puppeteer. I like to use the puppeteer analogy when it comes to online, and that's what gives a lot of these people.
And almost every
and that's
call
what gives a lot. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry, but almost every call now I get, when it involves, because at least here in the United States, and most of it, but I'll just stick with the United States for now, is that cyberbullying requires 2 minors. Okay, it has to be two children under 18 in the United States. And now what I do, and from talking with you as much as we have and learning, is now when I get calls from parents or educator or whoever, where the typology, the theme is cyberbullying, I ask them about cyberbullying by proxy. Almost every single case that's calling me now involves cyberbullying by proxy, to where it's no longer, and I don't know if it's because of mobile device, I don't know, I don't know that, is that almost always now it involves more than one assailant. And because now it's multiple assailants, not just the kid I sit with in science class who's messing with me, it's a whole group of kids and adults that are targeting me. Those others, I don't know who it is.
Yes, and that's one of the dangerous parts. And I did want to mention something, an interesting parallel here. Now, we know a lot of this stuff is just coming out. A lot of this research is just coming out, especially by your part. Okay, let's take, for instance, when one gets a DUI or one is driving without a license or something like that. Most of the time, when you go to court, you're gonna have to go to a certain class, which is basically maybe an alcohol education class or a safe driving course about how basically alcohol and drugs affect how you behave or what it does to your bloodstream. You know, the physiology of it, and all this stuff is done, you know, to be done by alcohol. Now, let's take into consideration they're teaching people like this, which is, at least as far as I know, being somewhat successful. However, we have the same amount, or if not more, damaging things happening with cyberbullying and all these different typologies online that can be just as detrimental as driving under the influence and hurting somebody, but yet we have no class for that. We have no training for that. And this is why this interests me so much, is because, you know, drawing parallels from training, we just don't have that.
And can I ask, because this is a philosophical question in of itself. It's not fun, but you would think, you know, we are 30 years, and yes, I know we are the generation, you and I'm 50, to where I grew up. You know, when I was a child, I lived pre-information age. Now I am information age. I also know that our generation, you as well, we are the only generation going forward that will have lived during a period of history to where it was before and then after information age, information technology. And, you know, 20 years down the road, not 20, but let's say 40 years, everyone who is born, lived, survived, is part of the information age. What I can't understand now, and there isn't a term for us, the pre-posters, I have yet to come,
right,
is why do we act like it doesn't exist? We act as if we live in pre-information age. We act as if we don't, you know, use information.
Well, some of us. I think some of us, yeah, but not all of us.
Well, no, yeah, I don't want to be an absolutist, but when you look at, you know, overall, you know, when you look at the macroscopic, most people, and it's based on the calls I get and the research, most people in general know what an app is, but they don't know, you know, how to set, for instance, on Facebook, you know, the privacy, friends only, or public. And what's worse is what they don't understand or don't know is what to expect, what boundaries, what rules to have for their children.
I would definitely make a statement here that goes back to, because I think that there's a whole underlying structure. It's not just, in my opinion, understanding or knowing that it's out there. We do know that it's out there, okay, and a lot of us do know it's out there. But we live in an age that, over time, out of sight, out of mind, has become an idealistic view, okay? You see, a lot of people want more prisons, but they don't want them in their backyard. A lot of people want more landfills, but they don't want them in their backyards. So the same thing applies, especially with constitutional law. Well, if it doesn't affect me, then it doesn't exist. And I think you have to really look into that before you make, you know, statements as if, well, we don't know, or we don't, because we do know that it's out there, especially a lot of us in InfoSec. And I think a lot of people are starting to realize that now, but it always comes back to, well, it's not affecting me or my family or my child, so therefore I'm not going to pay it as much attention as I would if it were.
Man, I agree with that. I agree with that 110%. You know, I mean, I don't know if that's denial or not. The old "not in my backyard" or it's somebody else. I won't worry about it until it happens to me. But for instance, when you look at cyberbullying by proxy and InfoSec, so you now have children that are being targeted by unknown entities, and to me, what would be a great paid service is for when I would be able to say to that mom, that dad, that school district, that public, you know, that legal professional, call this InfoSec professional, and he or she and or they will help you find out who are the by proxies to get them identified, because in a court of law, as everyone knows,
they would be guilty.
You have to,
yes, they would be guilty of
Oh yeah, but for evidentiary purposes, due diligence, you have to have black and white evidence. It can't just be circumstantial. Well, I think it's the mother or the aunt's sister of, but to me, InfoSec would play a crucial role in being able to help the family, the school, whatever the community, to figure out who is engaging in the online abuse of this child.
Yes, and by saying that, I agree with you 100% there also. But let me also tell you, it is very, very difficult to locate those people because they're very apt at hiding online. So this comes in to a lot of the iPredator stuff. To identify this person is virtually impossible if you don't have any training or if you have no training. I don't like to use double negatives, so forgive me. But if you have no training or you don't understand the psychology of this internet criminal and how they work, pen testing isn't going to help you do anything, But understanding where this is coming from and why this is coming from in the mindset of the criminal who's perpetrating, bullying by proxy, you're going to have a very difficult time if you don't have this kind of training.
Right,
that's why it's so hard. You see this all the time. You see that this is increasing and increasing and increasing. And why do you think that is? It's because my community and my profession, for the most part, are not trained to figure out how to hunt these people down and provide documentation to the legal system in order to put a stop to it.
If I may, and please tell me if I'm wrong, if I don't get the terms correct, because like I said, I spent some time studying InfoSec over the last, since we started, and I will continue because I find it fascinating. But one element, which I know is part of digital/computer forensics, which I know is a subset of InfoSec, but to me is crucial and vital to any investigation or case, and let's stick with the soft case of cyberbullying, is data extraction, to where an InfoSec, is that correct, data extraction?
Data extraction, the definition of data extraction would be, of course, extracting data from a medium or over a medium from an entity or person.
Okay, you got to explain that to the listeners that will listen to this show that are not InfoSec from my world. I mean, what does that mean?
Okay, there's many different definitions of it that mean the same thing. So they would be basically synonyms of data extraction. Okay, there are certain methodologies that internet predators use in order to extract data, which is to take data or gain intelligent data from a person or entity. Okay, so data defined could be anything. This could be personal information. This could be corporate espionage. This could be classified documents. This could be anything that can be digitally, anything that could be digitally construed as information would be the definition of the data itself.
Well, dear God, that would be paramount, if not vital, compulsory. And, is to the mom who's dealing with her son or daughter who's being targeted, by cyberbullying, to where, you may not be able to accurately identify, but with data extraction, exactly what the term is you would be able to compile data and information that others would not. Well, I certainly wouldn't be able to. That would be pertinent to going forward to help the mom, correct?
Well, it could go either way, depending on the thing. Now let me clarify a little bit too. When we say data extraction, I did give you that definition, okay? But there are many means in order to acquire that information. One being social engineering, another being pen testing, another being you see how this flows into place, and this is the exact bridge that we were talking about. So you could use any of those methodologies in order to extract data, social engineer data, whatever. But when you say you can create information or docket, we usually, on the information security communities and hacker communities, we use the term dossier. And a dossier not only contains information about personal information, names, addresses, security numbers, things like that, but it also encompasses psychological profile. Okay? So when you create a dossier on something, there's people that do this online in our own communities who use open source resources. They go into public court records. They hire people to break into medical records and create an entire dossier on a person. And once you have that dossier on a person, basically no matter how intelligent they are or good at what they do or good at information security, anything can happen to these. Anything can happen with the use of that dossier. You could exploit anyone. I would even argue that if I was given a dossier or researched a dossier, anyone in the world at any given time, government official, anyone, with that dossier, I would be able to manipulate that person if I were a criminal in any way, shape, or form that I would deem necessary. That's
incredible, because to me, and your listeners are going to think I paid you to say what you just said, but nobody
pays me to say it.
No.
That's why people listen.
For your listeners, and it can be attested by every single victim that calls me that is looking to either identify, get help, or to stop their child or themselves from being targeted. What do I tell them to compile? A dossier.
Well, you would need an information security professional in order to compile a dossier, because if you're not, like I said, you're not trained in these types of methods in order to acquire information or extract data. Of course, legally, you always want to make sure that you do what you do by compiling information legally. But for somebody like that who for instance, works at a convenience store or something, they're not going to have any idea where to begin. So that's where we come in order to create that for them, and that will be a service.
Right. Well, when I use dossier, and I've been doing this now for, ever since I created iPredator, when I say I will tell them is that you need to create a dossier or a folder of information, essentially of data that you can collect. Now, where I'm coming from, because it's all between the ears, I start off in concentric circles in creating that dossier. Obviously, if there was an InfoSec expert involved, that would be a much better dossier. But in the dossier that I'm asking the victim or the targeted person to put together is to start off in concentric circles. Is it your ex-husband or ex-wife? Are there adversaries? Then moving to the children. So for me, it is a data collection a process, and it's almost as like when I would do straight forensic evaluations from the courts. And when I was done, I would have a dossier. This is, even though it was still information, I wasn't dealing with information age stuff. It was the same thing to where, in my forensic evaluation, I would have interviews, histories, obviously psychological data information to help me formulate an identity and, mens rea would be intent of an assailant.
Guilty mind or intent, yes.
Right. So to me, when I say dossier now, and I explain it to them, is that without the shadow and without the InfoSec, when I say dossier, it is more the human kind of stuff, the people. So, even if they can't identify who the assailant is, I say to them, well, in your dossier, it is, even if you have to, who do you think it could be? Even if you don't know. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I would argue that this would be basically documentation. So if somebody's going to call you and say, well, I have such and such problem, your recommendation there would be, the dossier would be completed probably by you. We wouldn't really call it a dossier until it's been vetted. But what basically we want to tell these people is to, create a file of events, names, places, and opinions, which then can be moved on to another step, and then eventually the final step would be identification. So we want to have all the information that we can.
Because the biggest problem that I see right now, and as I said I think it was the last show or first show, when I get called Dr. Nuge, I'm usually the last one that gets called. They've already been called crazy by their family. They've already been told, by the loved ones, colleagues, whatever, turn off the internet, delete your accounts, whatever, stay away from them. They've already been to law enforcement, and they've already researched the court systems. So as part of what I recommend is in creating that, as I said, dossier or evaluation file is to create succinct bullet point kind of concise information. Now, if I had with me information security information, dear God, that would make, as you call it, dossier much more effective to when now I go to the court system, to where I can now prove that my ex-husband is behind all this because he's pissed off that he has to pay $1,200 a month in child expenses. And on. That's just one example. But that's why, to me, InfoSec, but I can't understand why it's not already being done.
Not in my backyard. That's the best. That's not in my backyard. You know what I mean? And again, too, there are very little statutes. There are very few statutes, federal and local, now that have to deal with. We're simply just on the shore right now. We haven't moved into the ocean yet, but we're right on the shore here, starting to create laws that govern information on the internet and data policies and whatnot. So that's why anything that we do in the United States usually takes years. So this is why we're starting to be aware of it, and we're starting to create small laws and move slowly. So we are seeing it, but we're moving slowly.
Slowly as a snail's pace.
Yes. Now let me also bring up an interesting point too that parallels with what we're talking about. We're talking about dossiers. Now I don't know if anyone remembers, but not too long ago, Facebook used its users. They used its users' information as a scientific experiment. Now, anyone can read up on that, which is determine the behavior of a certain amount of people within the Facebook user community, which angered a lot of people. They used their information without their permission to do a psychological and scientific experiment, which illustrated, what all these people were doing, their habits, and the ability to predict what somebody's going to do next. Anybody. That's what that scientific study did. Okay, and this is specifically with Facebook users or with a small amount of users. Facebook has some billion users. But at that point, that scientific study proved the fact that by analytical tracking and data, we can predict what a person's going to do. Of course, we have their movements. We have their things on we have their apps on their phone. We have their GPS. We have all this aggregate data that can be put into a dossier. And in essence, I could tell you with that data, I know I could. I've acquired data and did this, with the permission from a few people to determine their movements, what they're going to do. When they eat, all these bits of aggregate data are used, especially by, big sites, social network sites like this. So it's not, when I say dossier, I need you to understand that it's a lot more than just a little bit of this information, a little bit of that. It's a complete in text, a digital procurement of that person's life.
Right, and wouldn't it be nice, because let's say I'm a pediatrician, okay? Wouldn't it be nice as a pediatrician, and I'm in the same pickle that we're talking about? Well, as a pediatrician, I know how to treat children, when they got broken legs, flus, whatever. But I certainly don't know how to put together a dossier. What would be nice is that me as a pediatrician, I know, and myself, or my friend told me, is that I can hire an InfoSec expert to do that for me. That is what I would like to see happen going forward. Is that the pediatrician or anybody know that they could hire an InfoSec professional to be able to compile that information and to know how vital and important that is going forward.
Yes, and in addition to compiling that information, too, I want to stress out to the people listening on my community and the people who are not InfoSec professionals, do not try to go do this by yourself. Do not try to create dossiers of people. Do not go out and try to extract information from people. What we define ourselves as, especially as the information community, is white hat people, so we act within the law. Now, when you do create information and you do this, or if you're hired to do this, you are to do this all within the realm of the law. So when it comes down to going to court or something, you present that information that you've gathered legally to law enforcement. So this is not a carte blanche for everyone in the communities and everyone who's listening to this to go out and start creating, extracting information from innocent people. Understand. Now you want to get that clear. I do not condone that or promote that. So, not iPredator typologies. Let's move on. Let's move on to some typology characteristics of iPredators themselves. Okay, so let's discuss some of this. Why don't you give us a couple of those characteristics? So, within your research, you've characterized iPredators with a couple, maybe 8 different typology or 8 different characteristics. Let's hear some of those so we can assist people with better identifying predators on the Internet.
Well, okay. Well, we have the typologies, as you know. I named those 7. And, you know, what iPredator is a global construct. And in a nutshell, if I were to, be reductionistic, it essentially is anyone, any religion, any age who uses ICT, information communications technology, to harm, abuse, exploit, steal from, harm another person and or group. And then we go into cyber terrorism, it would be nation. Though that is the reductionistic definition of iPredator. Now, as I move on, I now look at more of the cyber criminal psychological aspects. And this is where
let me stop you right there. Let me stop you right there, Doc. And we did a bit of time here. Let's take a couple-minute break. Let everybody get up here, grab a drink or grab something, or head outside, get some fresh air, and we'll continue here. We'll play a song, and we can come back and we can discuss those different characteristics of iPredators. What say you?
Okay, says great. Let me go get my coffee. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, we'll be right back. This is Shadow Radio with Dr. Nuccitelli.
We're going to put on some classical guitar with a twist here. Shadow Radio. This is Matrock. I believe he's French, playing one of my favorite classical pieces, Canon in D by Matrock, Mattrach, and we're back with Shadow Radio here, and I hope you enjoyed that. All classical music can be interpreted in different ways, and I hope you enjoyed that, because not a lot of people understand the relationship between mathematics and music, and it's very, very similar. There's some very, very interesting parallels between music and mathematics, if anybody's interested in that. So we just heard that from Matrock there, Matrock. That was Canon in D. And I think we're going to go ahead and do the second portion here, the second instantiation of Dr. Nuccitelli, so stay tuned.
This call is now being recorded.
We're back with Dr. Nuccitelli out of New York here. We're going to go ahead and go through some really positive things here. As you're aware, if you listen to the previous shows from Shadow Radio, you know that Dr. Nuccitelli was attacked online by what he deemed the troll triad, which is a group of people or many people, in order to, what would the proper word be?
Defame, the actual term would be character assassinate.
Assassinate, okay. In which we had discussed that, and we had some good news. I don't want to keep everybody in suspense here, but what's the good news there regarding that situation? And just to recap, they basically, this group of people sent some complaints to the New York State Board of Education, declaring that you were guilty of, and I have to laugh at those two, homicide by internet. Is that what they?
It basically, because anybody can Google troll as an internet troll, but troll triad, and you'll see they can read the PDF paper I wrote. They can read it, and so that they have validation and proof of exactly what happened. But in a nutshell, December 18th, I have it before me, is a member of the troll triad, don't need to mention his name.
Well, of course you can. I think our users and listeners would want to know his or her name of the troll triad.
Of course. It's just Dr. Leonard Horowitz, which we don't need to go into the fact that, oh, goodness gracious. So if anybody is interested, you would Google troll triad, and I did my due diligence, and it's all laid out in both the PDF paper that's free to download, or they can go to the web page. But essentially, on December 18th, this gentleman had sent a 177-page file document, dossier, to the New York State Education Department Office of Professional Discipline, and I have it before me, and it says, please accept this urgent complaint against your licensee, me, Michael Nuccitelli. The complaint is filed for assault in the first degree, it gives the penal laws, under circumstances evincing a depraved indifference to human life. He recklessly engages in conduct which creates a grave risk of death to another person,
grave risk of death. Okay.
And thereby causes serious physical harm to another person. He then goes
we both know that's absurd. We both know that's absurd. I think everybody else knows that's absurd too.
Oh God! And then he goes on.
But in response, we can't keep everybody in suspense. Suffice it to say that they sent a bunch of nonsense to the New York State Board of Education and saying that you are pretty much a bad person. Let's encapsulate everything. Do a bunch of bad things, bad person. So what was the result of that?
Well, and if I may, because this is also, because as I was waiting, Nuccitelli's service, that's me and everything that I've done, Shadow, everything, is currently being used for extortion and in cybercrime targeting businesses and talk shows. And essentially, he goes on to say, I'm in violation of professional practices and also engage what he calls revenge pornography. And extortion.
Revenge pornography. Pornography, huh?
The reason, yes, thank God.
What kind of pornography would be revenge pornography? I guess it would be, if I was to think about it, I guess it would be, if I'm mistaken, I guess a boy-girlfriend breaks up and one of them posts one of their personal videos online. I would guess that was...
This is a man... And like I said, I don't want to, belabor this only because, God bless them, It's because from them I was able to finally put on paper in a construct troll triad. But essentially, case in point, and the image is there. Anybody can see it. He actually, because he sells nutraceuticals, I have the image, oh God, says he has 2 PhDs, not 1 doctoral degree, but 2 doctoral degrees, Shadow.
Have you vetted him? Have you vetted him? Does he actually? And not just 2 doctorates, and an MBA from where? Harvard University. Harvard. Well, I guess does he? I'm sure we can vet him.
No, he never got a bachelor's degree. Like I said, he's in his early 60s. When he was young, he went for a couple of classes in public health. Doesn't have a bachelor's.
Does he have any degrees? Does he have any degrees?
Well, he became a dentist somewhere else, and now it's 30, 40 years later. But where he's trying to sell nutraceuticals, I have the image which to me is false advertising. He's got 2 doctoral degrees and an MBA from Harvard.
Okay, and that's true. That's fact?
No, not at all. He never got any degree from Harvard. Now, where he got his bachelor's degree, but certainly not from Harvard, and he certainly doesn't have 2 doctoral degrees. Needless to say, he was the one who authored, which is the cerebral and the troll triad, that sent this nonsense to the New York State Ed Department. And normally, as you know, we hear this thing is, don't feed the trolls. Well, to me, sometimes not only do you have to feed the trolls, you have to jam it down their throats, if I may say. It turns out that the New York State Education Department Office of Professional Discipline did get that file, so he did send it, and the vindication comes from, I recently received response back from the New York State Ed Department. So first and foremost, I want to say thank you, New York State Ed Department, Office of Professional Discipline. I'm not going to divulge the supervising investigator's name because of, his role, but it's very quick. May I read it? It's only 4 sentences.
Absolutely. I want to hear this, too. I'm sure everybody else wants to hear the response from the New York State Board of Education regarding this situation, so let's hear it.
Okay. All right, thank you. And like I said, it's fair. The Office of Professional Discipline of the State of New York, in accordance with Article 130 of the Education Law, is mandated to investigate allegations of professional misconduct. This office attempts to perform this investigative function with all due fairness to licensee, that's me, and complainant, the bizarro one that's out there in Hawaii. Most importantly, and thank you for letting me say this, we have concluded an investigation into any allegations that was made against you. We did not develop evidence to support taking any disciplinary actions and are therefore closing our file on this matter. That is from the New York State Education Department. And thank you, Shadow, because of this lunacy of what the troll triad did, is there are others that know nothing about the troll triad, and not that I care, but took that information and then began to, as trolls do, say that Dr. Nuccitelli, an iPredator, is losing his doctoral degree, his license, and criminal proceedings are filing against me.
Well, we all know in information security, maybe not the other listeners, but we all know in information security to take things that are posted online with a grain of salt. But at this point, I think that we can see that you have been vindicated because for somebody to take the time to write a 170-page document and then for it just to be pretty much thrown in the garbage in a matter of a couple of days.
Well, the thing is, what he did share, and this is what brings up, and we don't need to go into, copyright infringement, copy fraud, intellectual property. I mean, those are other elements that trolls use. And when you get into, you had mentioned it before, social engineering and disinformation, is that about 6 to 7 pages he actually penned, that he actually authored. The 160-plus pages, what he did was he copied all of my web pages and blog posts, not all of them, but a good percentage, compiled them, and used them as evidentiary for me engaging in, as I read you, homicide by internet, or engaging in grave indifference, causing life threats, revenge pornography to other people.
Well, I would think that would be a good thing. I'd be probably like, hey, thanks a lot for getting all my information out there. As anyone who's normal, who has any intelligence factor, can see that it's simply just instructional information and property to illustrate certain aspects of iPredator. So I think it's interesting that.
And from this, but what it comes down to, as you and I have discussed extensively, hopefully we can change this, is that I would have never known that was even out there if I didn't have my Google alert set up for iPredator Inc., blah, blah, blah. That's number one. Number two, if anything, it's benefited myself and my cause because it motivated me to write Troll Triad, which is an archetypal construct, which, we can certainly talk about. And thirdly, presently, there are no laws because the only thing that I would be able to do right now, even though there's intellectual property, copy fraud, obvious slander, character assassination, there's no criminal laws on the books, but there is civil litigation. I would have to be able to show that I suffered negative consequences from his actions.
All right. Ironically, I think that you've suffered positive.
Exactly. Well,
it's a double-edged sword. So you wouldn't be. Yeah, I would agree that you wouldn't be able to pose this in court because you didn't suffer. You in fact benefited from this debacle and making the great out of bad situations. I think unintentionally assisted the cause and the information distribution that you're trying to get across to the internet. So what it comes down to, Shadow, is what if I wasn't me? What if I wasn't educating and trying to, change and, with internet defamation and disinformation and social engineering and all that? What if I was a mom from South Carolina with 2 kids trying to make, ends meet and pay my bills? And that happened to her. I mean, obviously different. Where obviously, she could lose her job. She could lose, it now shows up on first page of Google when anybody Googles her name. Well, we've discussed this in the previous shows, and I think we've touched on that a little bit. Yeah, that's detrimental, which is why this is pretty much why we're both trying to get this stuff done, why we're both trying to bridge these gaps, because until this is done, until the education information is out, until people start realizing and actually taking action, that person or wherever, the person who's not internet savvy is susceptible to suffering all aspects of the iPredator construct.
And what defamation is, which then is broken down into libel and slander, and this falls into social engineering, is when a person, and this where iPredator comes in, is the self-awareness, is knowingly compiles, disseminates, and exchanges false statements of fact. See, there's a difference. So to me, you can put in statements of fact where, you call me a piece of garbage, and you back it up, or you don't even back it up. It's just your opinion that you don't like.
Well, yeah, that would be an opinion. Yeah,
that is fine.
Me being more of a scientist, I always have to follow the scientific process, especially. I mean, even when you're posting things online, you know what I mean. But then you have to look at the psychology too. Most of the stuff that people post online is opinion, unless they have some documentation to back it up by a reputable source.
Right, and that is right. So I have no problem with any of that because that's the way it should be. It's called freedom of speech. But one of my little quotes is, freedom of speech does not equal freedom to slander. And what defamation is, and we're slowly moving there to where it's called criminal defamation, it is knowingly disseminating false statements of fact, where me, as the iPredator offender, I know it's false. I have no evidence, but I put it out there for the sole purpose of causing the target harm.
Exactly. But it's very hard to draw some conclusions from that, too, because what we see every day, especially during election years, and especially during politicians or political runs with mudslinging, people calling each other names, saying that this and that, how are we setting that example as politicians and people who run this country, or any other country for that matter, to get up and start calling, pulling out the bad parts of somebody's life in order to get elected? There's some very interesting similarities along with I think we have to look at this too as a larger problem because, as we've spoken before about not in my backyard, now we're seeing the people who run our countries. We've seen this for the longest time, writing, defamation ads on TV, well, he didn't do this or he didn't do that in order to defame, in order so the other person can get elected, and them knowing, The only difference between those statements is most of them are fact.
Well,
but they have the same effect.
Well, even the ones that are not fact, that are totally hyperbolized and embellished, is that when you whittle it down, there is at least a morsel of possible truth to that, which is mudslinging. Okay, so yes, I understand that, but in this case, and it's happening not just with me, like I said, it benefits me, but when a false defamation of fact is that come on, revenge porn, internet, death, homicide, creating life-threatening environment because of internet. That is out the box, and that is
there's a point that I wanted to make specifically that I had thought of during the break. But continue here till I put my thoughts together from what you were saying.
Well, what it comes down to is, and you're correct, but as we go forward with this troll triad, with these three, so he was the author, which, if you read Troll Triad, it is three archetypes. It is the cerebral, the provocateur, and the crier. And it is a group dynamic that presents, online users who get together as groups, and they could be 3 people, they could be 3 million people, but what they have are certain functions. In my case, the cerebral, who's the one who authored this idiotic file and said he's a doctor, okay? He's the cerebral, okay? And without going, the provocateur is the one who goes, see what look at what which I have proof of that. The provocateur goes into cyberspace and bolsters and gets people roused to what the cerebral is saying, that I'm the doctor, this is what happened. Then you have the crier. Well, what is the criers? Not crier as but crier, C-R-I-E-R, the one that goes out through cyberspace and proverbially yells it to the top of his lungs. Well, in this situation, the crier is the host of an internet radio show. And did he do that? He most certainly did. That's the crier. So as we go forward, the troll triad is a dynamic that talks about groups, I guess we could say by proxy, when groups are looking to character assassinate and disinform other groups for nefarious reasons, the troll triad.
Absolutely. And the interesting parallel that we can draw through actual life is, of course, back in the 1940s. Well, not necessarily, not even back in the 1940s during World War II, but any time that you have any kind of political mudslinging, not mudslinging as in where people run, but as in information and propaganda being disseminated. It's the same concept used in real life or put to an actual usage. Okay, except we're using the internet as a medium, but you can draw a distinct parallel between Nazi Germany's propaganda movement and any other propaganda movements that you've seen throughout our history. And I always like to mention, I also like to mention, Roman history because it's one of my very, very favorite things to read. And one of the things that you find out when you do read about Roman history is that they were masters of deception.
And you are correct, but I know, and not to get heated, it's best but trust me, Shadow, if they lived in the town or county over, none of this would have been done because I would have showed up. And I am not no little shrinky dinky from, upstate New York, if I may say, not to brag. But what it comes down to is because of, in cyberspace, I call it the veil of anonymity, people feel they can say and do and present whatever they want, and there's no recourse. So
under that veil of anonymity, too, there's a subset of precise attack vectors, and that's distance. I think distance definitely does play a huge role, especially when you're looking at cyber criminology or cyber crime. Distance would be an attribute or a portion of the equation, most definitely.
And I have never even met all three of them. I mean, Michael Vera of Late Night in the Midlands, for 3 years I would go on a show and do exactly what I'm doing now. And I know that, Dr. Leonard Horst, Sherry Kane, they were friends of his, but I've never met them. I've never had any conversations with them. I think maybe several years back I did a short interview on one of their internet radio. They don't have it now. But outside of that, I know nothing about, well, I do now. But for them to do that means that, as you said, geographic proximity, the knowledge that, what is this Nuccitelli going to do? And what I found, which is really, really infuriating, is I am not the first one that they did this to, nor will I be the last. And that is one.
Well, you could take that into consideration too, because of the intricacies of the attack or the advanced methodologies of attack. When you do what I do, you notice that you have the beginners, and you can pretty much classify the amount of times or how good they are based on the difficulty of the attack, so to speak. Because the difficulties of the attacks of this type of cybercrime are progressive, much like human predators in real life, rapists and whatnot. They start out small. They start out this and eventually work up to rape or something like that. But this is very similar parallels when it comes to people online. As they start out, they learn the trade, and as they learn the trade, they get better. And as they keep getting better and better and better, the victim number increases. The amount of victims increase. But I think that's a really good truth.
And what's interesting, which is, and once again, I want to say thank you to New York State Education Department, for me to have this, because, for me, it's not just vindication, but it also kicks up for me, I don't want to say rage, but anger, because I know, Shadow, that there are thousands of others who are in the same position, and I have spoken with people who have lost jobs, who have had children who did not get into their college of choice, because, not that they're supposed to, but they do it, is college admission boards. Well, what do they do when they're doing admission screenings, even though they're not supposed to do it? They Google the applicant's name.
Well, sure. Everyone does that now, and whatever's on the information, you know what I mean? And they simply don't have time to vet all that information, so it's taken at face value, and it's very hard to get around. The internet is not a place, for the most part, to find out fact. I don't want to say that. Let me retract that. There's a lot of fact on the internet, but most people are looking at the things that are, so we say, more juicy rather than dull, in order to take into consideration.
Right, well, yeah, I mean, that's what it brings, not that we'll go into it, that is dark psychology in the construct that I developed before iPredator, which is not information age, dark side of human consciousness, but dark side of human consciousness, which essentially within all of us, we have this realm, you know, kind of like Freud's id, but where I see it a little bit different. We don't need to go, but you are correct. If we have a choice to review Shadow just won a bowling trophy or Shadow just got tagged, you know, by the police engaging in cybercrime, if I have a choice to read both of them, which am I going to read? The bad stuff.
Yeah, that's just how the entertainment industry is set up and how media is set up, you know.
Right.
We always want to focus on the negative, and that's just a sad part of it. Other than that, let's move on here to these 6 or 7 things here. Now, I think most of the people or most of our listeners understand what these concepts are. The first one, of course, is online deception. We don't really need to discuss that. We know what that is. And these are the characteristics of iPredators. 2 being cyber stealth. We all know what that is, even though who are not computer savvy. It's very simple. Disinformation, we know that. Troll triad, we've already discussed. Internet addiction is, I don't think that there's a lot of information about internet addiction. A lot of people will, and I remember asking you at a time because I work with computers every day. That's my profession. So I was wondering, well, maybe I'm an internet addict. But then I realized, well, I can get up and I don't have to use the computer. I think the internet addiction definition would be the need, same as any other drug. Now, the big thing that I want to get on here and talk about here is cyber psychopathology. Now, what's cyber psychopathology?
Well, boy, that's a show in and of itself.
Let's get the Reader's Digest version here, because we can all talk
Okay. Cyber psychopathology, once again, this is according to me and everything that I've done studying the enmeshment. Cyber psychopathology is the assumption that people who have, whether it be predispositions or have some form of behavioral, mental, whether you want to call it illness or dysfunction, if they're not careful when they go into cyberspace, use the internet, they are at a higher risk of engaging in nefarious, deceptive, and, not pro-social online activities. That is what cyber psychopathology is. Take it to its worst form. For those of you who know of Ře₀ Loughner, the Arizona shooter, or Anders Breivik, the Norwegian mass killer who, brutally murdered those 76 children a couple of years back. James Holmes, the Colorado movie shooter. Just those 3 alone, and there's plenty of others too, that spent a lot of time in cyberspace. Matter of fact, Adam Lanza, who just 2 years ago in Kent, Connecticut, went in and brutally murdered all the first graders, all the children. All of them were spent an inordinate amount of time online and in cyberspace. Now, cyber psychopathology to me, I am not saying that violent video games cause it. I am not saying cyberspace cause it. It has nothing to do with cause. It has everything to do with correlative and influence. Because, and this goes into a little bit more of the Reader's Digest, is I strongly believe in Carl Jung's idea of what he called the collective unconscious, and his belief is that from the moment we're born to the moment we die is that we never really experience true reality. We're always caught up in our own mythologies or dissociations. Case in point, Shadow, you've done it, I've done it. You're driving down the highway, you've got an hour drive, but you're thinking of, Sophie Loren, or you're thinking about a software program.
You're thinking random thoughts entering your consciousness.
Anything, right. But yet, at the same time, you're
able to control the vehicle.
you're able to control the vehicle, you're able to drive. Right, correct.
Well, I think that's a great thing. I think that's a great ability of a human being, is to be able to disconnect their cognitive thought processes and still maintain their motor functions. I think that's really a really interesting thing.
Well, and we've been able to prove, not we, but science has been able to prove, is that is the autonomic nervous system kicking in, that it goes into like auto drive or auto, to where you don't have to be paying attention every minute when you're driving, but now all of a sudden you end up at your destination. And this is the key point. Not only were you not paying attention the whole hour of driving, is the time seems to be distorted, because what were you doing for that hour? You were thinking of random thoughts and everything else.
Well, because you weren't perceiving time. See, this is a great thing, because my hobby is time and quantum mechanics and physics and things like that. So time is very interesting to me. Time is one of the favorite things, or one of my passions, to study linear time, or how time progresses, things like that. But there was a study done, I think that you would be interested in this, a long time ago. Now, I don't know if you ever heard of this, but they did a study where they took people up on top of a bungee cord, okay? And if you remember, a lot of times with PTSD, post-traumatic stress, or whatever, it was theorized that time would at least slow down, at least to a point during an event, a very significant event for a person in their viewpoint. So the experiment was that they would put a specific, very high-end clock or timekeeper on the person, and allow them to jump off of the string, or what's it called, the bungee cord. Mm-hmm. So during the time down, the perception of time by the person was distorted to such a degree that they assumed that it was slowed down, simply because of the extenuating circumstantial events that were happening at the time. Not ironically, but interestingly enough, when the timepiece was brought back and analyzed, of course, we saw that there was absolutely no distortion of time. Okay, so that's a very, very interesting experiment that I hope that some people can go out and look at. And I think that you would really enjoy reading that too.
Yeah, I'll check it out, of course.
Yeah, a person's view and perception of time during an event can be and is distorted based on that, but it doesn't affect time in its linear state.
Right, and so for me, with cyberpsychopathology, I came up, and I'm still needing to, and hopefully with your help, is called digital dissociation or cyber consciousness, and then right. I strongly believe that what's happening is,
Could this be the same as that disassociative kind of time distortion?
Most certainly, and that's
so when one gets online, they could maybe consciously or unconsciously disassociate themselves to what they're doing. That's an interesting concept, because we know we can do it when we're driving. We know we can do it when we have extreme events. So perhaps if we get online and do something, we could disassociate ourselves much the same way. Therefore, time wouldn't have the same perception or perceptional means as it would, or views as it would normally in our own standard reality, right?
And that is where, correct. And because of that, and like I said, this is all theoretical, and it's probably going to take me the next 30 to 40 years. But when I say cyber consciousness, what I believe, and once again, this is theoretical, is somehow human consciousness, our minds, are somehow slowly but surely, it may take 100,000, I'm not talking cyborg per se, but along those realms, or AI, artificial intelligence, but around that too, is somehow either replicating via information technology in cyberspace, or is responding to the way cyberspace functions. Because if you take, an image of the 80 billion neurons and the 100 trillion interconnected neuronal connections, and you put it next to...
Yeah, we've discussed that. It looks like the Earth, with the Internet.
Right, so they essentially look the same. So to me, and it's happened to me, but cyberpsychopathology is, for instance, and this is, because I studied this, like with Anders Breivik and Jared Loughner, is that if I'm already have I hate to say psychiatric illness, but if I have some type of psychological dysfunction, let's say,
or borderline. Let's say borderline. How about that?
All right.
Let's
say
we have some possible borderline psychological.
Right. Yeah. Because we're all neurotic anyway. We all have our own baggage, but there are those of us where that baggage is a little bit heavier than others. Okay.
Well, that trigger. What actually to bring that out? Perhaps maybe the internet and the digital disassociation could be the trigger. Perhaps. I mean, I'm no psychologist, but I read a lot. One
of the things I wanted to tell you, I don't want to forget this, is that I want your listeners to know that, not that I hope I already know, is that, well, at least for myself, I hope I can teach folks to become, and to perceive and interpret the information age like who? Shadow. Because you are so close, if not already, and I can't say you are because we haven't created it, is a cyber criminal profiler, which I know is going to come down the road, but you're doing it now because what you have that I don't have is that you have technological prowess and savviness. But what you also have, that I have, is that you also have a psychological an understanding of the psychodynamics of the hows and whys of why people do what they do in cyberspace, and that is invaluable. So I wanted to, congratulate and compliment. I wish I could give you, a doctorate degree in cyber criminal profiling. But it doesn't exist yet. I'm hoping we can create that.
Well, so in your opinion as a doctor, and I really appreciate you saying that, that's very kind of you. So in your opinion as a PhD and a doctor, do you think that my knowledge at this point would warrant having my own PhD, if that were a field?
Well, I mean, if you already had done a couple of movies, you know that what celebrities get are honorary PhDs from schools that they went to when they were kids, didn't finish up, didn't even get a degree. They went there and moved. So, yes, it's called an honorary PhD. Celebrities get them all the time. So, yeah, no, I think that, and once again, this is all theoretics, but from what I've learned about you, what you're teaching me, and what I'm learning needs to be done going forward, I would definitely put it this way, Shadow. If we were in court and I was, working for the other side, I would say this guy, Shadow, doesn't need to be voir dired. Under cross-examine, just make sure he's who he is and move on. Voir dire him, which voir dire is essentially when you have an expert witness in a trial, is that opposing counsel will try his or her best to make you look as if you're not.
You don't know what you're talking about, right? Yeah.
Right. So voir dire is the process of establishing on both sides and the court that the expert is in fact an expert.
And just to be funny here, if anybody wants to see an actual voir dire in action, movie-wise, you can watch My Cousin Vinny when they voir dire the witness in that movie. I always like to quote movies, so I guess that's actually, if you want to see it in action, that's actually the way the law works when you voir dire a witness. So in My Cousin Vinny, you can watch that and see what happens.
Well, speaking of My Cousin Vinny and the Italians, God bless us Italians, can I just real quickly give a shout out? And it's actually better news than the whole triad stuff. I mean, yes, I'm grateful for New York State Education Department. Yes, I am just as grateful and honored that Dr. Țepenuș would include me in his recently published Inside the Criminal Mind. But may I share something that is good news to me that is may not to be to others, but to me is by far the best news of recent happenings?
Well, I think you've earned that. I think you've earned for all the information that you've given on Shadow Radio to maybe plug somebody that you want to mention. So you have the floor, Nucci.
Okay, I really appreciate it. And for your listeners, they'll probably listen to this. What's so big about that? To me, their name, and they're here in the Hudson Valley of New York. Their business is called kęⱧ, and they own 4 convenience gas stations and delicatessens, all under one roof, all inclusive. They do monster business. They have 4 locations, going to grow, and they are just great people. I've known them for many years. They make the best in their deli, the best fried chicken I've ever seen, I've ever tasted, even better than KFC or anybody from the southern states. And they have the cleanest bathrooms. Okay, that is
cleanest
bathrooms.
That's always a good thing. Anytime
right,
I specifically remember the Seinfeld episode about the cleanest bathrooms where George Costanza would always know exactly in New York where all the cleanest bathrooms were.
Exactly, and they're also New Yorkers. Like I said, they've got 4 locations here and they're growing. And I want to say thank you to them. And the good news for me is, Shadow, is they are the first, and I'm now 50, they are the first business that is non-infosec, non-forensic, non-psycho, non-our world, that actually not only supports and endorses, but actually is proactive with the community. You know what they do? They're giving out my cyberbullying tactics to folks. Now, they don't jam them down people's throats, but they have them there at their locations to where if a mom comes in, a dad, or anybody, on their counters are iPredator's cyberbullying tactics that they can use for their kids. They are the first.
I believe we call that passive advertising.
Well, I mean, to me, yes, it is advertising, but
I don't consider what you do as advertising. Let me make sure I'm very clear with everyone. I don't consider what you do, Doc, as advertising, because advertising usually entails, by the dictionary definition, to make some kind of revenue or some kind of return on an investment based on advertising. Whereas you're not putting any dollars into advertising; you're only putting in time. So I don't consider what you do advertising, and I hope anyone in the community.
Unfortunately, and yes, I agree with, and thank you, but your listeners who have marketing backgrounds will quickly say they are correct, is that it's part of social cause marketing, But the point is that for me, and they are the first to, and not only is, and please, if you're in Google Plus, is go to kęⱧ and give them a review or a +1 and say thank you. And at their website, because they has a blog, they even asked me, which I did, is I created a couple of blog posts that talk about internet safety tips and cyberbullying. But to actually have a business to actually care enough to, want to educate their constituents, their customers, or anybody, that to me is just, it's the best news I've heard so far in the last year.
Well, that's something special because you don't see many communities, or actually small businesses, putting forth anything towards communities today. And there could be a range of factors why not. I'm not even going to get into why some small businesses don't. But you are right. It is good. Now, we've got a little bit of time left, and I want to cover a couple things here before we knock off because we're almost at 2 hours here. I want to cover the 2 last things on the show. I want to cover some characteristics of psychopaths, and then I want to cover... And then I'm going to cover some 7 signs of online psychology based on your research. Okay? So we're going to talk about these. We're going to try to get through these because we're running out of time here. But first, these are the characteristics of psychopaths. Everyone likes to talk about psychopaths. I don't know why. And let me ask you this question. Have you ever interviewed a murderer or a psychopath or anything like that, Dr. Nuccitelli?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
But you're not able to diagnose them with psychopathy. But yes, I have.
I understand. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that myself. I already knew the answer to that question. I just wanted my users to understand that you've been around. You've been around. So, the 12 characteristics, and there may be more or maybe less. Are we absolute on the 12?
Yeah, well, those 12 are always included in some way, shape, or form. So those 12 are the characteristics. I mean, dating back from Dr. kęⱧ in 41, all the way to now, when you have who's considered not just Dr. Seminole is criminal personality, but Robert Hare, Dr. Hare, is considered one of the fathers of modern psychopathy, as well as now the neuroscientist Dr. James Fallon. But Dr. Hare, and I even went up to Toronto to do his 3-day psychopathic deviance scale training. I mean, he is really the Sigmund Freud of the psychopath. So these 12 are what he includes in the psychopathic deviance scale. And to me, from all my research, those are the 12 that you look for if you're going to say to yourself, uh-oh, psychopath.
Okay, and now let's get it clear to the audience, too, that just because somebody has some of these traits does not necessarily make them a psychopath. This is the difficulty of the science.
Right, and for instance, one of them being deceitful and manipulative. Okay, well, a lot of people are manipulative and deceitful. That doesn't make them psychopaths. What is important for the listeners, and we probably won't get time because I wanted to bring up the internal breach, the info, I won't even bring that up, but it is understanding the vast majority of psychopaths that walk the face of the earth are not serial killers. There's that book years ago, the Sociopath Next Door. It's the same thing that applies. Most psychopaths are not serial killers, are not murderers, and look like you and me. If anything,
I never believed and subscribed to that. I've never subscribed to the appearance of a person determining their behavior. That's something that, I don't know who come up with that, but I just never agreed with that, because you notice that anytime anyone mentions a psychopath, a lot of the times, or a high probability of the time, they say, well, they look like this or they look like you and me. I've never subscribed to that. I wish I knew who come up with such nonsense like that.
Well, it is nonsense, because what it did is it led humanity, not all of us, society to think that a real psychopath is a serial killer and is going to be dressed and you can see him coming down the road.
Right.
The reality is, no, quite the opposite. Because then what we have, which is becoming even more popular and more studied, is the corporate and the white-collar psychopath. And
yes, and they are predominant. And believe me when I tell you, from my research, there are a lot of them.
And some people believe that they are heads of state, and they are employed in the federal government. Some people believe that they hold very high positions. Some say, on and on and on. So the white-collar and the corporate psychopath, the research that they have been able to show is that in the banking industry is where you find the highest rate of psychopaths.
And I would love for my users to have some documentation on that too, and I'll put it in the show notes. So please, before the end of the show, remind me so we can put that in the show notes about the statistical analysis showing where bankers are more predominantly psychopathic than most.
Oh yeah, and people, because that is coming out more and more, and there's, I'll look for it because I watched it about a week and a half ago. There is a documentary that specifically talks about it, and it's free to watch. But yeah, that is, but getting back to the psychopath, we had pre-information age, all right? Let's go back years, where you have all these signs and symptoms, all right? Now all of a sudden, okay, because one of the hallmarks, is not just psychopaths have no guilt, no shame, no remorse, and shallow emotions. But what they are incredibly, incredibly divisive and manipulative. And everything that they spew out of their mouth tends to be related to their grandiosity and what benefits them. Okay?
Well, see, I would also argue that there's a special case too. This could be another show in itself. Well, everything that you said I agree with is true. However, I would also argue that there's another little inkling that do that not just for themselves to achieve something, but because of enjoyment.
Oh, well, yeah, well, that is another, that's another element, another horror, which is, how do I say, ridiculous sensation seeking. No, you are correct, is that, psychopaths will do stuff to where you think they're being charitable because they're spending 3 hours at the local dog pound to socialize dogs, but in reality, between their ears, that's not why they're there.
Oh yes, absolutely, and that's why it's so dangerous, because you can pick out these people, and this might. And let me give you a scenario of how a hacker or a black hat or somebody would think of this. Now, you just mentioned the scenario where somebody would go to a dog pound and volunteer their time in order to help the dogs and everything. Let me tell you how, if this were the case, if I were a cyber criminal, I wanted, knowing all this. Knowing what I know, how I would achieve gathering information. Let's say somebody, male or female, works there and I want some of their information. What better way to go in than to volunteer and help the dogs? Okay? So you're first establishing your trust, correct? It's the same thing, Psychology 101. It's the same thing over and over and over. You go back in, you befriend these people. And then, sooner or later, they clock out, and then you can do that, and people will do this, and people have done this. Keep on to this scheme for months until they have all the information that they need in order to acquire their primary goal, in order to facilitate the completion of their primary goal.
And you are correct, and this is where, and I know we don't have much time, but real quickly, from an InfoSec standpoint, and I have began to study it, is, psychopathy. Not all characters that InfoSec eventually identifies and has apprehension and prosecute, is that when you say internal breach, all right, we talked about that on the last show, where you had said, most of the issues are internal breaches. Well, that person who is the one that is the internal breach offender, dear God, Shadow, what's going on between his or her or their, let's say his or her ears to think that they're going to get away from it? Yes, grandiosity, but what else?
What makes you think they're going to get away with it? Is that what you're saying?
No. Well, what I'm saying is, after you had told me that most breaches, I had asked you...
Are internal, yes.
Are internal breaches. Well, so then I put myself in that person's position that I'm going to hack, rape, or, I'm going to steal from my company. And when we had discussed it, you had said because of internal breaches, you had said because I can do it. That I have the ability, I have the technology, the skills.
Most of the time it's to get even. A lot of the times when they do it is to get even. A lot of people work years for a company, and when you're thrown out in the street, you feel a sense of, I work really hard. Well, and I'm just thrown out in the street here. You know what I mean? And it's hard for me to rationalize that too. We know what's right and wrong. Okay, what the company did was wrong. And as much as we want to say that, yeah, they should get what they deserve, it's not legal. It's so hard, you know what I mean, to say, to that poor guy who's worked for years, well, he went in and he messed up a few things and cost them some money. Well, good for him, you know what I mean? He caused them some problems because they fired him and treated him badly.
Well, and you also used on the internal breach scenario, which fascinates me. And if you don't believe me, we'll have to go listen to the last show or the first one, where you had said is that there are times where InfoSec gets involved where with the internal breach is that they haven't been fired, they haven't been laid off. They're still employed with the company, but what they do is they engage in destruction of whether it's, networks, they create problems because what does it do? It validates their, why they're important and why the company needs them.
Yes, absolutely. It will create problems to which no one else can solve. And I've seen this happen when I'm working with companies, and this is just one of the things. And you'll see a senior network engineer or system administrator create a problem to which no one in the entire company is able to fix, not because of lack of intelligence, but because of and they set this. It's a setup. They set it up so precisely and so intricately, and it's so premeditated that any anytime somebody would try to fix that other than them, there would be some kind of block. And everybody would be saying, I can't do it, I can't do it. Well, lo and behold, here comes John the man. He can do it. You know what I mean? And then he finally fixes the problem. And after 13 people couldn't fix the problem, John finally fixes the problem. And you now successfully manipulate the entire company to the point where you can ask for a raise. You see how this works now?
Oh, no, of course I do. So, but if we go with John, the IT, who's doing that, doesn't necessarily doesn't mean he's a psychopath, but he is certainly engaging in psychopathic behavior. And to me, that is fascinating, to where you would go to that extent, John, to prove your worth within that company.
Well, you have to understand that IT guys, to do something like this, would take very minimal resources. Okay, so IT guys, including myself, I can't speak for all of them, but a lot of us deal with probabilities. So, I deal with numbers and probabilities at all times. Okay, so what's the trade-off? So to create a scenario like that in order to get a raise would take so little effort from anyone in the IT industry. Okay, it wouldn't even occur to them. It may seem like other people, because they don't understand how IT works or whatnot, to say, well, that's just so grandiose, or that's, how would you go through all these steps? And merely the ease of doing something like this could be as simple as writing one line of code. That's where the disconnect arises from people who don't do technology to people who do. Large things can happen by little things, okay? They use the butterfly effect in terms of time, and the butterfly effect, how a bird can flap, goes into chaos theory, when we're talking about how one thing affects the other. Okay, and this is the same concept. Within a corporate network of thousands of computers and servers, one tiny script with about 88 characters can run that company into the ground, can move it, do anything with it. And you have to understand that these people understand, the people who do this stuff understand. So they have that kind of control. Imagine having that kind of control, one person of a multi-billion-dollar company. It's unfathomable.
And that John, if we want to use it, poor John, he is far more likely to be a psychopath than Susie, who got fired recently and now is, via revenge, retribution, getting back at the company. It is John who is willing to put that piece of code in, has researched it, premeditated, knows what needs to occur, to what all corporate and white-collar psychopaths do this stuff to ascend themselves, to climb the corporate social ladder, and to be recognized. So that was,
But when you think of it, it's not that much different than a political race. When you take those parallels and it's not much different, than putting yourself on high than a political race. You see those parallels?
Oh, no, of course. I'm not the one who's going to call, Obama or any of our president because I love my nation, whether I think it or not. But, I do personally believe there are senators, there are major political figures in our country, and I also believe globally, that are corporate white-collar psychopaths. But they don't kill anybody, But for
they don't kill anyone directly.
Well, exactly, and that's how they maintain. So they are the most dangerous because, don't get me wrong, a serial killer like Dahmer, John Wayne Gacy, Ted, but, they're dangerous, But in terms of on the large scale, what you're talking
about people like you're talking about. You were discussing people who can kill country, who can destroy entire villages, who can destroy. Who can murder hundreds, thousands of people.
Right. So when I was evaluating psychopath, because what it comes down to, the corporate white-collar psychopath, Shadow, rarely gets caught. That's how good he or she is. The psychopaths that I evaluated as a forensic examiner, the vast majority of them would be lower to middle class. Some of them were, upper class, but the reason why I'm evaluating them as psychopath is because they weren't good enough at being psychopathic. Not that we want psychopaths to be better than they already are, but that is what psychopaths are. But that is why I'm saying the internal breach in that guy or gal, that John, who was adding that line of code, knowing he's the only one that can fix it, and by getting called to fix it, that is going to improve his worth within the company.
and let me just say too, I also want to say that it's not all his fault too, because when as technology grows, the IT people are expected, not like any other job, like bookkeeping or anything else. It's work, it's hard work, it's deemed. There's a different perception when it comes to IT people. It's an expectation that everything should work all the time. So they're put on the front line, and it's very hard for a lot of people. And we're in an hour here, and I could talk all day about this, but we can't go beyond 2 hours, and we're an hour, 2 minutes. But we have those 12 characteristics and 7 sides of online psychopathy. And perhaps we'll see what the community says. If they want another show, maybe we'll do a series of shows devoted just to this. And then I can do the shadow show here with the other information, and they can choose. So if they want to listen to Shadow and Nooch, we'll do the Shadow and Nooch show or something like that.
The Shadow and Nooch show. Hey, whatever. And once again, I thank you, Shadow, because you're providing me a forum to, hopefully educate others. And what's great is you're listening base, not all, but a percentage or infosec into me. I am telling you, Shadow, what you're doing is not only valuable, but mark my words, is there will be a day when InfoSec is going to be considered one of the most encouraged industries to work in. You watch.
Oh, I agree with you. We've already established that we enter agreement of that. So this concludes part 3 of Shadow and Dr. Nuccitelli discussing internet predatory behavior, psychopathology, iPredator. You can check out that information at iPredator.co. And I definitely want everybody, and everything that we talked about here should answer those questions about how it relates to information security. So I want to thank Dr. Nuccitelli for all his time and his calls and his research for putting it here. And I'm sure we're not going to be hearing the last of him. I think he'll be around a little bit. We'll go from there.
Well, thank you, Shadow, and thank you to your listeners.
Okay, Doctor. Thank you.
I hope you all enjoyed that. That was very informative, studying that information. So if you're going to be an InfoSec, you're going to have to study that. It's just how it is. Let's get to your questions here. I definitely want to get to your questions today. Harry Bottom, what can we expect from Shadow Corp in the future as far as subscribing for the current members and future members to be? Well, I hope to keep offering the services and more. Everything that I want to offer for membership and everything, I hope that I can keep doing that. As long as people do. I want to offer free services for everybody. I basically want to have a free school. My goal is to have a free school so everybody can be educated on information technology for free. That's my main goal. And what are my thoughts on the Apple Watch watch kit? That's ridiculous. I would never buy. First of all, I don't like Apple. Everybody knows that. I don't buy Apple. I would never buy Apple. And to have it on a watch is just insanely ridiculous. I don't even like the iPhone, let alone having it on having it on my wrist all the time. Nah, I don't think so. No, my thoughts on the Apple Watch? No. That's just for people who. Do I use firewalls? Sometimes. Yes. No. Look, we're all going to get hacked someday. There's no system that's totally secure. So, one time or another, we're going to get multiple times maybe. We're all going to get hacked one time or another in our lives. It's just the nature of the beast. It's just going to happen. Even good old Shadow here has been hacked a couple of times. It just happens. It's actually kind of fun because you learn, and I love to learn. Merrick R. asks, what's the most commonly used programming language in Shadow Corp? It depends what the situation is, because most of the clients have specific requirements. So if they're asking for something for system-based, we're probably looking at C or C++. However, if they're looking for web-based stuff, we're looking maybe try to do Ruby on Rails or Python or anything. It ranges. It's eclectic. So there are too many to say. So we use the barrage of programming languages at Shadow Corp. We don't focus on just one. There's faults in all of them, and there's faults in this one, there's faults in this one. Anyway, can I make a tutorial demonstrating encryption of an HD with TrueCrypt so we can obtain the same security your machine had? Can you make a tutorial demonstrating encryption of a hard drive? Absolutely, Harry Bottom. That's actually pretty easy to encrypt a hard drive if you want to do that. I don't think it would be very interesting to sit there and watch, because it does take, depending on the size of the drive, it does take about a half an hour or so to get everything going on there. So David West has a couple questions here, and we're going to go answer those. Are you Michael mě or Chef Hornster, the authors of Data Hiding, Exposing Concealed Data, or Multi-Mining Operations? No, that's not me. But I am writing a book, but I'm not writing that one. I did not write that one. I cannot take credit for that one. Seriously, honest, what is my opinion on Vivek Security Tube Linux Assembly SLE? Well, I have to study up on that. I have to read up on that for you. I can't give you an I'm not going to talk about it if I don't know enough about it yet. I don't know enough about it to give you an opinion yet. So I will have to look at it, and we can converse privately if you want, David West. But SLAE I will look into and see what you're doing. I can hear that show coming in, so we're almost at 2 hours here, and the music's coming in, and we had a very interesting show here with the final element here of iPredator and everything, and so we're closing that sequence up to open new doorways, and I hope that everybody decides to start getting more interactive with the show. I really appreciate the donations and the support and the postings and the interactivity in the community. It's wonderful to see that. You don't see that every day. It's hard to get people to get up and go do something, so I'm glad that we have an interactive community that we all can come to every day, and we know that we can build this kind of relationship. So Shadow says thank you for everybody, and this is Shadow Radio show number 11. You guys remember when we did the first show with a funny voice, so you can see the progression of how the show evolved over time. So it's an interesting thing to look at too if you're a scientist. So this is Shadow Radio signing out here. We're looking at 5:33 a.m. here on Friday the 13th. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, Friday the 13th. And interestingly enough, I did hear that music, but I'm going to stop it just to do this. Friday the 13th doesn't come here that often. But we were young. A lot of times we had those good old-fashioned horror movies. The Jason movies and Friday the 13th. That's what we grew up with. So let's a tribute to that genre. Let's run into the woods and fall, and we get killed by Jason. So this is Shadow Radio signing out. Say I'll see ya.